Hey everyone, Mick back here, and this time I'm here to discuss a new series I have called Through the Decades. And the idea is I'll be reviewing albums and records that were produced from 1955, then I'll do 1965, 1975, 1985, 1995, 2005, 2015, and the end of this year, which will be 2025. So the idea is I can go through my collection and appreciate the albums I already have and do it in a logical way. Now, 1955 is a good place to start, mainly because the nature of the LP, which had been kicking around in some form since 1938, 1939, it wasn't fully developed until about 1945. At the end of World War II, Columbia released 120 odd albums on the 33 and a quarter third RPM format. That really wasn't popular until about 1955, 56. Before then, 10 inches were popular, and obviously 78 shellacs were a key thing. So for this first one, and this will be for the only one for this, I thought I'd look back what kind of music I would possibly would have been into in the years preceding 1955 and coming up to 1955. So I'll start with an absolute classic, and that's Robert Johnson. Now, sure, Robert Johnson met the devil at the crossroads. This is a 3 LP box set. You get all these recordings. Probably would be my favourite artist from the pre-1955 period. This box set's interesting because it kind of put box sets and old music back in the realm of something people would buy. This triple album comes with a booklet, which is actually the same as the CD booklet. Great booklet nevertheless. You do get quite a good history of Robert, significant history of Robert, and then of course you get his lyrics, which means you get to sort of really immerse yourself into the song. You also get this interesting overview about other albums that are available in the Roots and Blues series. So probably my favourite pre-1955 artists, the original 78s of these, go for big money. My favourite track would be the Terraplane Blues. Okay, next up. Now this is a series called American Epic. And American Epic is a documentary from the US, but the records that came out of them were restored, and not digitally restored as a cheap remaster, but digitally restored as a fine art project would be, with the aim of getting the best sound possible. Anyway, Lead Belly's on this, and you do get a lot of tracks here. Probably my favourite of these would be Death Letter Blues, Part 1, Part 2. Another in the American Epic series, The Carter Family. And probably out of all the records I'm showing today, this is the one my family, meaning my grandparents and my great-grandparents, probably actually had heard. And obviously this is the classic Carter family lineup with Mother Maybelle there, who was a guitar innovator. These recordings are interesting because they sort of go from the Tennessee recordings, but then also things like Wildwood Flower and Foggy Mountaintop were recorded in New Jersey. Once again, restored like they would a fine film, and produced by Third Man Records, which means Jack Squire had something to do with this. Now, continuing on in that series, Blind Willie Johnson. The reason why I mention Blind Willie Johnson is, even though Robert Johnson, they're not related, was my favourite artist probably from the pre-1955 period, Blind Willie Johnson does have my favourite song in there from pre-1955, and that was Dark Was the Night, Cold Was the Ground. John the Revelator is one everyone would probably know from this as well. Blind Willie Johnson, certainly key pre-1955. Now, certainly pre-1955, there was a lot of classical albums that were reissued in that initial Columbia batch. However, I don't think they would have been my favourite recordings of those albums. I'll continue on. Now, this one is Charlie Patton, and allegedly the founder of the Delta Blues, Charlie. Nice gatefold on this album, and more importantly, you get a nice little overview of the song, plus it gives you a chart of how to potentially play it. Now, the label these is on is called Yazoo, and this has nothing to do with the synth duo of Alison Moyet and Vince Clarke, but instead the classic blues reissue label. And you probably can't get as a bigger reissue than this on Yazoo. Once again, you do get the lyrics included inside, so you can really immerse yourself in the blues of Charlie Patton, and a good example of the quality that was put on the Yazoo label. Okay, let's get into 1955 sort of proper. Now, Elvis Presley hadn't released an album at this stage, and the Billboard charts do not come into being until 1956. So that sort of gives you a bit of a idea of where we were in 1955. But what companies did, like Blue Note, was reissue 78s on the 33 1/3 format. So this is the amazing Bud Powell, and it features Fats Navarro, Sonny Rollins, Roy Haynes, Max Roach. Does it get any better than a lineup like that? Barely. Often equaled, never bettered. Blue Note 1503501. Now, this is an interesting version of this, and this is a Japanese version that came out initially in 2012 on the EMI label from the original master tapes, a mono, and guess who does the mastering? Yes, Mr. Tone Poet himself, Kevin Gray. So, nice thick jackets. I think we're getting the formula here, and certainly an authentic sound. Very dull in a sleeve, and then there's the record there on the 33 1/3 micro groove, long playing Blue Note. So certainly a record I would have picked up in 1955 if I was alive. And just for the purpose of it, here's volume 2, and this shows how they actually come in this series when you buy them brand new. You actually get the record out of the sleeve and inside a white outer sleeve. Okay, 1955. Blue Note is one of my favourite labels, or is my favourite label. And here's the Herbie Nichols trio, once again with some reissues. Blue Note 5068 and Blue Note 5069. This one's on the King Record Company out of Japan, and features both those 10 inches. On the King reissues, get a Japanese inner, and you do know the Blue Note Masterpiece series. Okay, let's jump forward a little bit. And this time, it's still in 1955, but this version of Miles Davis's 1501 and 1502, which comes in two parts, Volume 1 and 2, featuring Jay Johnson, Jackie McLean, Art Blakey, and Kenny Clark, is from the much, according to me, malaligned 75 Blue Note series. Now, once again, these were often digitally remastered and certainly done a pretty good job by Bernie Grubman. Where the problems are sometimes are with the pressing. So they went with particularly cheap pressings, which they thankfully redid for the Optimal series. Sorry, for the Classic series, and redid them at Optimal. But you did get one of these inners with the 75 series. So that's Miles Davis Blue Note Volume 1. And then there was Blue Note Volume 2. Now this particular version came out on the Toshiba label from Japan. So two main jazz reissues labels were through Toshiba and King. And this is Volume 2 from 1955 with those compings of earlier 10 inches. And 1955 was a very pivotal year for Miles because it was the first time that he got voted Trumpeter of the Year in Downbeat, the jazz magazine of choice. And just there so you can see what the inner information or the insert was in the Toshiba version of Miles Davis Volume 2. Nice overview there of every album in the series. And certainly a real go-to choice that was affordable in the days before we had the Classic series. Okay, I'll continue on. Now, favourite albums released in 1955 would be this one. And this is Clifford Brown and Max Roach, Study in Brown. This is the Verve version that came out a couple of years back and features Clifford Brown on trumpet, Max Roach on drums, Harold Land on sax, George Mara on bass, and Richie Powell on piano. If you know the Verve Acoustic Sound series, you know the fantastic works you're getting. And certainly an album, if I was into music in 1955, I would have bought, if I was able to obtain it. Okay, Milt Jackson, once again, this comes from an earlier album, Blue Note 1509, and it features Milt Jackson and Thelonious Monk Quintet. This here is the Blue Note Classic series, and this features Milt Jackson, Percy Heath, Kenny Clark, Lou Donaldson, and of course the Thelonious Monk, the man himself. You do get some classic tracks here from both parties. Anyway, an album once again I definitely would have bought in 1955 if I was around. And finally, my favourite album of 1955. And this is just absolutely fantastic. Features Hank Mobley, Cecil Payne, recorded at the Rudy Van Gelder studio in Hackensack, New Jersey. And J.J. Johnson's is there. But of course, the star of the show is Kenny Dorham. And Afro-Cuban is exactly what this album is. And the key driver here, and I can imagine in 1955, Carlos Velarde's conga just pushes this forward like nothing else. Now the version you see here is a Music Matters version, and this is on the famed SRX vinyl. I suspect this is the best this album would have ever sounded, and certainly brings 1955 alive. Okay, thanks for watching, everyone. That's my 1955 Through the Decades. See you soon for 1965.